Hi there. I suppose, like a lot of people, I come to a religion, in this case Gnosticism, from an emotional standpoint or an emotional need rather than from any particular intellectual analysis. Although I do enjoy intellectual analysis, I must say, and I like theology as well and the philosophy of theology. And I like studying it with Orthodox Judeo Christian models in mind. Um, but not that I actually liked philosophy straight very much. A little bit, a little bit. I'm too lateral a thinker, I think, for philosophy really, to be analytical. So I mean, I was thinking about what statement or description would best sum up my belief, and that's the light of gnosis shines through the refractive lens of the Holy Grail. And so this, and I've said about the light occurring. I'm not quite sure what I mean by the verb to occur in this context of the light. The light occurs in the midst of a few things that I perceive to be wrong with my life or with my attitudes or emotions. Some of them quite deeply ingrained, I suppose, as well. For example, disdain for the Orthodox Judeo-Christian models, and also I have in mind for disdain for humanism, atheism, and even Buddhism. Really, I don't find them. I find them rather annoying, actually, to be perfectly honest. And somehow the Judeo-Christian model I find not only inadequate but irritating in a way. Really, I mean, I don't. This sacrificial aspect to Judeo-Christianity is something I don't understand and don't really get. I don't really want a God to sacrifice himself for me. Um, you know, I don't I don't sort of want that somehow, but I don't really know how to explain that. I mean, admittedly, ignorance, the darkness of ignorance. I mean, dismay. I think one should be dismayed at one's own ignorance. You should try to increase the amount of knowledge that you have. As I explained before, it's a bit like having the more dots that you have, the more bits of knowledge that you acquire, the more that you can create patterns by joining up the dots, and in the pursuit of a certain hypothesis or something, or just plainly, or just being creative with your thought. But the more knowledge you have, the more power you have to be creative. Really, it seems to me, and to find things out that are astounding or astonishing or inspiring as a result of filling yourself up with knowledge, and knowledge balanced with understanding, of course. Distrust of authority, that's a deeply ingrained psychological problem that I have. I suppose even scriptural authority, anything which makes itself out to be as any kind of authority, I have a distrust for it. Not exactly a disdain, or I'm not disparaging authority. I'm not denying its necessity, but I certainly don't trust it at all. Don't trust people and authority. And a despair at the cruelty of humankind, of course. And I learnt today of a new kind of cruelty, which is an interesting perception of cruelty, which is the cruelty of bringing children into this world, so-called antinatalism. Where you're actually, maybe you condemn yourself to cruelty through the act of reproduction, which you could say is a blessing, but which could also be seen as a curse and a cruelty, because the baby you never ask the baby whether it wanted to be born, and you couldn't ask the baby whether it was wanted to be born because it isn't born yet, and because as a fetus it wouldn't even understand the question. Do you want to be born? So that's an interesting, if rather chilling, somehow rather disturbing form of cruelty. But I think cruelty is also a matter of perception. And there's relativity somewhere in there as well. And then there's my own personal depression, which is very great and very profound and very prominent at the moment, anyway, in my life. And there's disillusionment with the new age counterculture, occult sort of spiritual healing scene, as it were, or scenes. I never really got on very well with the Golden Dawn material. And I don't know, Crowley's stuff, although quite charismatic and bombastic, is also hopelessly flawed. Although I haven't really considered the flaws of Thelema for a long time, but there are some, and which I've discussed with other people. So it's not just my own judgment. Other people have discussed it with other people, and it seems a flawed system to us, to people I've discussed it with. So in the midst of this darkness, I see that the light of Gnosis is the one single one single stab of light which penetrates the darkness and, as I say, gets refracted through the lens of the vision of the Holy Grail, for me anyway. And I was going to say that the things that might arise from this vision, from the perception of the light of Gnosis, is a greater acceptance of the world as it is, but also a creative inspiration, cultivating an unselfish attitude, which is also very good, but seeking a sort of comfort, I suppose, and you sort of have to admit that. You have to sort of say, yes, I am looking for comfort. I don't know, maybe I'm even looking for the opiate of the people, as Marx might call it. Literally the opiate to take away the pain of existence, the pain of existence in this world, existential angst and all that kind of stuff. But on the other hand, there is also a focus on the light without necessarily wanting anything or doing it for any particular purpose or trying to get any kind of result from focusing on the light. And this is where analysis becomes very difficult to explain because I don't really know what I mean by this, really. I suppose comfort is a word that could be applied, the comfort of philosophy or the comfort of religion. You could go into meditation and go into, a very relaxed state of mind, which could be pleasurable in its own right, and certainly a holiday from yourself, as it were. But there's also a kind of, like, even if you could studying the Gospels of the Nag Hammadi Gospels, or the original Gnostic Gospels that were known through Irenaeus. I mean, just studying the words of Christ according to the non-canonical Gospels would be inspirational. But again, simply just for its own sake. I mean, you wouldn't do it to get anything out of it in particular. You would just sort of, I don't know. I don't quite know how to explain this really at all. It's just that maybe you're providing something other than the despair of darkness and distrust and disdain and all these negative emotions. But it's not exactly escapism either. I wouldn't say it's escapism exactly, although you might accuse me of being escapist and using religion to escape from things I can't handle. But I don't know. I'm ready for all that criticism, really, and I still think that there is something, other and something greater than self out there, a theistic solution, if you like, or a theistic focus for one's meditation and contemplation. and that is real and existent, and also part of what is reality, the underlying reality of what we perceive as being real, and that this has great significance, this has great value, and that so the vision of the Holy Grail is something to cultivate. And I know when you first start doing anything, there's a neurotic power, neurotic energy to starting anything new and being fresh and fresh, fresh-faced and bushy-tailed kind of thing. And then it becomes kind of like, I don't know, after a while it becomes commonplace and mundane, which is kind of all comforting. And then it becomes rather too mundane and rather too dreary, which is also, I suppose, a stage too, a stage. And then you pass through that to some kind of consciousness which as yet we know nothing about, as yet we have not experienced as a species. I have not experienced soul realization in that sense. But I suppose when I do experience it, it will be obvious what it is that I'm experiencing. And it won't be an hallucination or dream or some kind of escapist activity or some kind of obsession that one might get involved in order to escape pain, in order to deal with one's pain. It really is a transcendence of a transcendence almost, which, as I said, is hard to put into words and hard to analyze, and perhaps I couldn't even describe it even if I did experience it. And then I was trying to describe it to you after, and I couldn't find the words to do it. You'd have to be there yourself. You'd have to go where I was or I am in order to actually know what it is I'm actually talking about. So that's kind of what gnosis means to me, I think, which is none too clear. None too clear to myself, really, and I don't know if it's very clear to you. And I suppose everybody has their own meaning to be drawn from gnosis, and from the Gnostic Gospels and from the Gnostic belief system as it is, and as we can effectively construct it from various sources. And it's a bit like Tantra. I mean, there's so many sources that you could possibly draw on to understand Tantra, and yet Tantra just means mind liberation. So once you've got that, maybe you don't need to study anything else at all. Once you understand, get it, sort of thing, and once you understand that gnosis is also mind liberation of a sort. But the thing is about Gnosticism, I suppose, is like all religions. It takes place within the context of a dialogue or a dialectic, a dialogue with orthodoxy. It's like in Paul's epistles, there's a dialogue, a dialectic going on between faith and works, for example. And that somehow gets resolved. Or does it get resolved? I don't know. And so, you've got all these dialogues going on, and you're trying to construct a reality or an understanding by dialoguing with different people, which is great fun and which is nice if it's done respectively, with respect and with compassion and with a bit of humour as well. But then you retreat into yourself. And you focus on the Gnostic light that comes into you, whatever that means, and this dispels some of the darkness that you feel within. So I'm coming from a place of emotionalism and emotional emotional consideration of what Gnosticism means to me.